Yeah, sure. Maybe 4. The last one I finished is my last student.
What was her name?
Her name was Darius Burnett.
Oh, I don't know that.
And Darius is now assistant professor at Mississippi State.
Okay.
And trained him in growth biology and molecular biology.
Okay. Who else did you have?
Well, I had a guy called Constantine Fenderson.
Okay.
He was,
I know him.
you know him?
Yeah, I think
We
so.
always used to call him Constantine N. Fenderson Esquire,
Okay.
because he came from Jamaica when they stood under the crown,
Yeah.
and he actually had that title, you see, or something.
Okay.
Constant Fenderson. Then I had another guy that was from Nigeria, but he was Biafran. And you know, he did his PhD with me, and he got involved in something, and the guy went home and he is gone. I don't know what happened to him.
Okay.
Then I had another guy who went to Tennessee State, and from Africa, at Michigan State as a PhD, and he went back home to Nigeria. He's now a vice chancellor somewhere, one of those universities.
Okay, because I know I spent 8 years there, and I did some work with folks in the Moran.
And Moran and poultry, yeah. There's a different department.
Yeah, I know.
Poultry is separate,
and his name started with a G. He's passed away now. He was
not Bob Brewer.
No.
That's department head.
He did work with chicken.
Parasitology?
TBL dyschondroplasia.
Yeah.
So what I did was look at the collagens and how protein kinds. Yeah.
They got their own building there.
I know, I saw that now.
There's the human nutrition people in there too.
Yeah.
And they built no classrooms in that building because it was industry funded and they felt it should all be for research.
Yeah.
What a moronic.
Yeah.
They have a big old demonstration lab that's got benches and for teaching and benches. You sit in that, which is not a good academic environment.
I know. Yeah.
But what are you going to do? Right?
Yeah. Jim Brown is another one that Jim Brown. His name was Jim Brown.
Oh, I know he's still alive.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't know if Sally told you this. I direct 2 training programs that NIH funds. They're R25s. They're R25 mechanisms. They're competitive training programs, and so they are both designed to increase minority pursuit of PhDs and careers in biomedical sciences. This is something I sort of acquired from being at Tuskegee.
Right.
Yes. So the 2 programs, one of them is for post-bac. So if somebody gets a BS and they need some transitional program to help them be competitive for PhD admission, that's called a prep program. So it's a 1-year prep. Then they come in and take classes and do research.
A lot of undergraduates could use that, by the way.
Yes, exactly. So we've had about 96 students participate in it now. Yeah, so and we've had about 45 PhDs now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so the program itself has been quite successful, and we've had it renewed for three cycles. So we're about 14 years. Yeah. And then we have a PhD program too that's also funded by NIH. It's called the IMSD program. That one is relatively new. It's been around since 2008. And actually, Sally does have a trainee in the program. So, so the design of that program is a little different from your traditional agricultural training program.
That's right.
Yeah, because so when they come in, they rotate.
Yeah, you have a rotation, which is the medical school.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So because the department admits a bunch of graduate students in the first year, they help in courses, and then they rotate, and then they pick somebody.
A lab,
picks them.
Yes.
Whereas in agriculture, if you don't have an advisor that's willing to pay an assistantship, you don't come.
That's right. So this one is different. So NIH pays your first year, and then you are actually funded for another year, but that's based on what happens.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's 2 years of funding from NIH, about $70,000. Yeah. So that allows us to There are two ways to it, right? It allows the faculty to also be comfortable accepting the student that they probably would not have accepted in the first place, right? And it also allows the student to direct their path. You know, if I'm comfortable in this lab, I choose it.
Right, because sometimes these are real culture shocks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Now at Michigan State, we had a program.
Yeah.
That was a state-funded, was a program from the university.
Yeah.
That did something like that, and a number of minority students I had, but they only funded 3 years for a PhD program, and I said, that is, very limiting.
Yes, yeah.
You cannot usually get a PhD done in 3 years, and then you had to dig up money, okay?
Yeah.
And that was always an issue. So, but yeah, I was involved with that.
Okay.
Kind of a program.
At Michigan State?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So as part of that program then, what we do, with the past 8 years, we talk to distinguished scientists who come in, and sometimes we invite them, and we have them reflect on their journey.
Okay.
And we're really, really pleased because your journey is fantastic. I mean, since 67, I think, when you got your PhD. So we use this as a way for our trainees to sort of see what there's actually a manuscript that we have that's been revised now. Even I have done some of it, but I did it for Science Magazine. It has this thing at the back that calls Doing Science for Applied. So we talk to our guests about their journey in science and what challenges they had, how they overcame it, what they see as the qualities they look for in graduate students. I mean, you've had our dean was a graduate student in your lab, my colleagues were in your lab. So I know that you know what makes a successful graduate student. You've produced people who've gotten to impact the community. So this reflections then that we do is to try to sort of pick your brain so our trainees can look at it. So I really appreciate that you've agreed to do this. I enjoyed your seminar very much. It was funny. Alan asked me, "How was the seminar?" I said it was funny. It was nice. So to start with, I would want you to tell us about yourself. Really, what made you get interested in science? What the motivation was, and whether you had mentors that allowed you to keep at it.
No, I really didn't have too many mentors in many ways, and then I did, but I'll get to that. Immigrated from Germany in 1955. And the reason we came to this country is because I had a aortic valve problem and also a arterial stenosis. And that soon after the war in Germany, those surgeons were still shell-shocked from the Second World War. They wouldn't do any risky surgery. Came to this country, I had my first heart operation in 1959. Then I had a heart valve put in 1981. Okay, and my dad, we settled on a dairy farm. He ran dairy farms for people, and then we had our own dairy farm, and I was fully intended to me that I was going to come home and farm, be a dairy farmer, after I went to college. Okay, but my parents always felt I wasn't quite strong enough because of the heart and so on. So just de facto, I got interested, and I was probably pretty daggone arrogant. I could do anything, I thought. So one day I announced to a couple of guys in animal science, I don't think I'll get a PhD in nutrition, and maybe a biochemistry, And they say, well, you're a good student, maybe we can help you with an NIH fellowship, you see. It seemed to be easy in those days. Today, it's just a lot tougher, more protocol.
Yeah, we get 100 applications for 7 slots.
But this was from an institute, the Institute of Nutrition and Food Technology at Ohio State. Doesn't exist anymore. It's an old thing. But it had very good leadership. Actually, famous lipid biochemists were the heads of that thing. And well, anyway. So I was graduated when I was 21 or something like that from Ohio State. Then that next fall, I started graduate school, and I got my master's in 2 years, and then a few more quarters, I had my PhD. And the reason why that worked, the master's work really took some time to do. It was with pure culture organisms and anaerobes and all that. Whereas I collected samples out of the rumen of sheep the first week I started, and then I fed rats. So, and it did evaluation, did a lot of amino acid analysis too. In those days, that was really heady and novel. And that's so advantageous when you do heady and novel stuff. It always publishes right away. And so, you know, so I got out of there in '67. So I was there in graduate school from '64 to '67. And then I went to Penn State, Ohio, then I went to Michigan State. So this was all at Ohio State, my bachelor's degree and the PhD. And I took a lot of biochem courses. And I always encourage students to take a biochem course. And I always encourage students to read at least one paper a night. Okay?
So this was a foundation course. These courses are foundation courses.
The biochemistry?
Yes. That you
well, no, they were
sort
advanced
of
and graduate
graduate.
courses. Oh yeah,
Okay.
they weren't just foundation courses. But it was the amassing of a lot of knowledge. And I think it's done me a lot of good because as you might have seen the seminar, I can talk about all kinds of stuff.
Yes. Yes.
You know, with equal, you know,
Yes.
and that's,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
because of the training I
Yeah,
had.
okay.
It's not a special deal, but that training. Okay, so then I went to Michigan State and was in the faculty there for 28 years. And that's why I had Dean Grand as a student and others, Dan Eversole
Yes.
and
Yes.
Sally.
Okay. So your transition from undergraduate to the master's program, was it just because you were like, I don't have anything else to do, I have to keep on the spot?
Well, I
Or
always
did-
felt I just don't want to, you know, I rationalized in a way that, gee, why graduate? You know, I might as well just stay around here, you know?
Yes.
And so I'm a long ingrained academic. The academy seemed to agree with me, you know, one way or
Yes,
the
yes,
other.
yes, yes.
No, I think it was very seamless from my undergraduate to my graduate
Oh, is that right? Okay. Did you feel, because so when I told you about this piece that I published in Science, that I wrote in Science, that Science published, it's called Doing Science While Black. So Science organized a national discussion we call AMA, so lots of thousands of people were on my wiki. So one of the comments I made was, if I walk into a room as a scientist, people know right away that I'm a black scientist, right?
You can't hide that.
Yeah, yes. So the question that I thought, okay, when you speak, then there's no right away that you are different. Did that happen, or you didn't care? I mean, it sounds like you yesterday and today you said, bullshit, I don't care. I mean, did you take an attitude right away to say I'm different, but I don't care if I'm different?
Well,
based on the way
yeah.
you spoke.
That's right, because I was born in Germany.
Yes.
And I was a child of the 60s. And even though I tend to be politically fairly conservative, we had one motto: respect no authority. That was right across the spectrum. And while we were saying that, we were listening to doo-wop music.
Okay.
So, I mean, as I said there, I had really good students and a lot of tremendous colleagues. But in other words, I also had a pretty good career. I'm a fellow of a number of societies, especially the American Society of Nutrition. Yeah, so that is really a special honor because most of those kind of people were nutrient discoverers of vitamins and so on. And so there's not too much that can happen to me now anyway.
Well, not now. As an undergraduate going to grad school.
Oh yeah, now okay, let me
transition.
answer that. Okay, well that was different because I wanted to go back to the farm. So my goal was just to get bees.
Okay.
But then this was the year when they started honors programs. And so the assistant dean, now they're associate deans, but then they were assistant deans for resident instruction, talked me into the honors program. So I had to upscale my grades.
So he's sort of your mentor in a way.
Well, in a way, but not very much. But really, the mentor was our dean, a guy called Roy Cartman, who was a really an interesting person. And we don't have time to discuss all that. But I mean, but we sat down with the dean and he griped about everything, told us about all the faculty he think he should fire, and he was very nice in some ways. We got inside information. There were 9 of us. And so then you had to get your grades up, but on the other hand, you could take courses, you get credit, but you didn't have to get a grade.
Mm-hmm.
You had to pass, but you didn't have to get a grade. So I took a lot of extra courses in chemistry and biology and all that. And so when I got to graduate school, I already had a heck of a lot of courses under my belt. And so that slow progress of going through your courses and all that, I didn't really have. I pretty much took biochemistry courses, some physiology courses, and so on, and then also nutrition courses. Those were ones of things, but that mostly at the master's program. So, I mean, my parents started talking about me doing nut farming when I was already a sophomore, okay, and a junior and so on. And so I think that I didn't consciously do this, but it was a serendipity phenomenon,
mm-hmm.
you know? And I guess you gotta take advantage of opportunities, and it
yes.
seemed like the faculties and that I knew well are all having a pretty good time, and I like the lab work, and I like to know why, and so it just grew from there.
Okay, very good. So as an immigrant, speaks differently.
Little differently.
Yes, and your parents, were you the only child?
No, my sister came with us, and she's Canadian now, and she was a professor of history at York University.
Okay, very good. Congratulations. You both did well.
Well, she's 2 years older than me.
Is she?
She's retired.
Okay.
And then my father wanted a child born in this country.
Okay.
And they were still of age, so they could do that.
Uh-huh.
So I had a brother born in '56.
Oh.
And he got his degree in dairy science at Michigan State.
Okay.
And then he went south, worked on an orange grove, and somehow that merged into working in the water treatment business.
Okay.
And he's now part owner, a very minority part owner, of a water treatment sewage system of a medium-sized town with the average home price of a couple $1 million. Okay?
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, but they don't pay. The rich people don't pay. That's why
they don't pay the water bill.
He shuts them off.
Yeah.
And then they drive anyway.
Yeah.
And so, but he's got the operating license.
Okay.
And it's almost like a lot of city engineers have this expertise too.
Yes.
It's not the engineering degrees we usually is a specialty of So those are the 3 siblings. Okay.
Yeah. So it looks like the parental influence was quite
Oh
strong.
yes, my mother, because they grew up in Nazi Germany.
Yes.
And they're both dead, and I don't know how deep they were Nazis or not. But all I know is this is a small child, and I was still in Germany.
Yes.
My dad did not have very good jobs, and we didn't have a lot of money, although my mother was a daughter of a very influential businessman. He owned some ships, but he got run over his ship, he drowned, so on.
Yeah.
In Germany, you have, especially in the rural areas, you had a hierarchy. Nobody looked down on anyone, Things were expected. The higher up the line you went, the more was expected from you.
From you, yes.
Yeah. But every time they had something going on, my mother would go to these things. I said, "What are we doing here?" Said to myself.
Yeah.
We can't afford this, and someone must have afforded it. Who knows? So I don't know where they were at. Never talked about it.
Okay. Yeah. So let's just.
But they were very education. My dad went to gymnasium.
Okay.
And my mother went to the women's portion of the gymnasium, and so so education was always stressed because you couldn't lose it. And so my sister got a PhD. I have a PhD. I have a nephew that's got a PhD. My other nephew is finishing his PhD in Cambridge. So we're going to be overloaded with.
Well, PhDs, that's good. That's good.
High and deeper, right?
Well, I tell you. So I'm from My dad I'm from Sierra Leone originally.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been here for 30 years, 86. So my dad was a Muslim and had 5 wives, and there were about 40 of us. We have about 10 PhDs. But my own children, both are interested in law school. Well, one is finishing up law school at Notre Dame. You know, so no, they want nothing to do with PhDs. I think one generation is all.
Yeah, well, law is the next step.
Yeah.
Then pretty much soon you're going to be in the high income bracket.
No, I've told him. Yeah, and he's going to work for a law firm. Yeah, so the other part about your career that I think our trainees would definitely like to hear about is this. You've worked with so many people. I mean, they've gone on to do different things, administration, and so where do you think the line is between administration and research? Say, can you do both? You seem to have done.
I was a department head at one time.
Yes.
Although
for 3 years,
they
right?
told me to do one thing, but I was in Alabama, and a lot of folks didn't want to do that thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Now that's changed.
Yes.
It's been 20 years.
Yes,
Okay. So we're now finally, and I think we kind of missed the boat back then. If we would have done back then, we did now. Our department would have been benefited from that.
Okay.
But I was a Midwesterner.
Yeah.
And there's a different culture in the South.
Yes. Yeah.
And the present head we have, he was born in North Carolina.
Okay.
And he understood that. And that's not the only reason. But reasons come together, and we're moving in the right direction that way. Meanwhile, I always enjoyed teaching. But as far as administration, all this is concerned, I never trained my students for those tasks necessarily. But to me, it says, I don't care if you go into extension, if you're going to be in applied research or basic research. While you're in training, you're going to learn it all. Okay? And you're going to put this knowledge together. And so my first 6 PhDs, I think they all became extension specialists. And they were very successful. They all won national awards and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then Alan, among others, they went into research, and then he became a department head at Purdue. Mm-hmm. And he is a wonderful administrator.
Yes. He's my dean.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't call him dean. But
Yeah.
I just call him that to kid him. Yeah. How's the dean?
Yeah, he's doing all right.
He's doing all right. Yeah, he's a good guy. He had a nice suit on yesterday.
Yes, he's trying to impress you. Yeah. Talking about impression. So normally when I know in your departments in the Michigan State and Auburn, much like mine, the students come to us. Most often there's no. I think students apply. They say, "I want to work with Dr. This." And
right. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So I mean, have you walked up a philosophy in your long and successful and distinguished career where you say, "This is the type of student I'm looking for"? Is there that in your head, or is there?
No, actually, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
There are a few students I had like that I actually recruited and that I wanted. And there was this one blonde who worked in IGF-1, and I did never get her. She was really brilliant. So you recruit students, you're going to get all the people you want.
Yes.
But what happened at Michigan State is that many kids applied to graduate school, and it was passed along the faculty, and a lot of faculty didn't want to bother with them. And they come by in the office and say, well, we can give it a try. We'll see, we just had some preliminary period and try. So what I always felt were inherited students in some ways. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then when they all turn out so good, the word was Bergen always gets the good students. But it wasn't necessarily the case.
Okay.
Now, these students were all very capable, of course.
Yes.
But I was not necessarily their first choice. And they were seeking around. And then like I said, I recruited some. I recruited kids from Western Kentucky. Recruited from Cornell, and Tuskegee. That was part of the. I had a bunch of those, and so but many of my students almost walked in the office and said, I don't like where I'm at right now, or I'm going to want to go to graduate school. What do you think? Or they had another advisor and they weren't getting anything done. And then I don't know, they just all turned out pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. So when you have, it looks like you've had 27 students, I heard yesterday.
No, 25 PhD students, about 40 masters.
Yeah. So that's an outstanding record. I mean, in this training program we have different faculty mentors, but the training program by itself has 43, 45 PhDs now. But that's you did 40 masters, 25. Yeah. So when you have multiple students in your lab at the same time, I know you have gradients. You could have like somebody third year PhD like would be but how do you normally establish your relationship to them? Are you a friend, a mentor, a supervisor, a parent? How do you come about maintaining?
Well, I've been accused by various people of being too close to my students. I'm not really a taskmaster as much as some are. I just insist that they know what they're talking about.
The students. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if your colleagues don't know what they're talking
about.
Well,
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But when they are doing something, they got to know the background and why they're doing it, and it's always in mind was wholesome on an educational foundation and the basics for these things.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's always I worked on that way. Then we just got along, and I come to the lab a lot and talk to the students how the work was going, and we were always interacting, and so it was a pretty pleasant atmosphere usually.
Okay.
And so we didn't have really any issues ever.
Okay. So do you try to avoid drama but just being present and making sure everybody knows that you are available? What's your philosophy?
Oh, I'm always available. When you teach undergraduate students, you have an email, you're always available.
Well, before email, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I was available. I mean, I also, you lead by example.
Yes.
In the United States, we don't have the hierarchical system they have in Europe. If you're the director of the institute, you have people right below that do everything. You can go to the opera on Wednesday evening. We have to write plans on Wednesday evening. It's really different, right?
A football game on Thursday.
Yeah, well, I go to all football games on the weekend. But anyway, you see, so I was very actively engaged in laboratory work.
Yes.
I let my students do most of the animal work, although I did a bunch of that too at one time. Yeah, I was running, those days, a fairly extensive metabolomics lab.
Yes.
The only thing we didn't have is a mass spec. Or you might have called it then liquid chromatography.
Yeah.
And we measured amino acids and fatty acids and all kinds of metabolites.
Yeah.
And from there, I showed you some of those pictures. You can make in special experiments, you can make a lot of deductions and ways to obtain numbers and what you're going for. And then I also was blessed that she was an odd one, but I had this technician. And a lot of people thought she was a little slow. She was, not slow at all. She was brilliant. But she was just a little different, and she had gotten a degree at UCLA, a master's, and never went for a PhD, with a very famous lipid chemist.
Oh.
And she was really good in the lab. And she was so good that I said, we want to do this assay. Here and here you can look some of this stuff up and take a look at this and see what you can do, and then we'll review it and how you can modify it and what have you. So I always had that. I was lucky. I always had good backup, you see.
Yes.
Like that too. And then I always had 3, 4, 5 students around. And then I had a co-worker. And the co-worker was a meat scientist named Bob Merkel, who is one of the best meat scientists in this country ever. He got his PhD in Wisconsin, was at Michigan State. And we ran together for many years, working on certain things.
Uh-huh.
And the graduate students called us Burkle.
You were the first one. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I got it.
So, and a lot of those students have all been successful, and Alan really was part of that crowd.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I never thought I was doing anything too special. Does that sound like?
Oh no, that's fine. I think we'll be done in 3:15. Yeah. I'll try to finish up before.
Yeah, we don't miss that flight.
Yeah.
I missed my first flight from Atlanta, so
Yeah.
it worked. Let's see, what was I going to say?
The environment and your collaborators, I think.
Yeah, it really made a difference.
Yeah.
But it was also good for the students. We did a lot of things together. We had multiple experiments. Everybody got one enzyme to run.
Is that right?
And so, because when you work with flesh tissue, you got to do it. So we did a lot of things, as you noticed.
From your presentation.
And I couldn't explain all of it, and there's some people understood a lot of it, but others didn't, I'm sure. The technical aspects.
So it's very good. One of the things that our students really grapple with, and since you've seen all of it, the last 40 years of your career, 50 years here, do you always expect them to go to academia? What do you say to your PhD students when they start? No,
we talk about that.
Yeah.
It was a natural trend.
Yes.
I went to academia, and it's even better if you work in what you studied in.
Yes.
But that's not always possible.
Yes.
You may be hired for teaching ability in a certain area, and then you got to find your research program.
Yeah.
But I had some people leave the academic area. I had a guy who was very successful in the pharmaceutical area. A couple of feed supplements that we feed now in cattle that have in pigs, they have an extremely high penetration, and they were FDA approved, of course, and all that. And then I had a few others that went out to industry. Not everybody went to academia, and that didn't really bother me very much.
Okay, so did they come to you and say, we're a little,
No, I gave them a lot of advice on interviews.
Okay.
And I said, when you come to interviews, you gotta show that you have a toolkit. If you can't do what they need, then they're not gonna be interested in you very long.
Okay.
And then I told them about negotiating for a salary, which I never did when I was first started. That was a lesson learned, right? And so, I mean, and they would come in and visit, and I was around them, and you can only babysit a student till they got the first job, but actually your students will be like your children forever.
Okay. Very good. So that's a philosophy. All right. This has been excellent. I think this has been great. So, what would be your, you've seen the Alan Grants, the Sally Johnsons of this world. They've done well. The current generation, I think they're called millennial. What are they called? The ones that we have
on the cell phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the ones who sitting in front of me as I see they lay their phone down listening to your talk. So what do you say to them nowadays? What do you say is the most important thing for a graduate student how to get a PhD?
Well, what I always say is that don't limit yourself. A lot of students will say, well, I want to go in this direction, and I don't need to take that coursework, or I don't have to participate in that journal club, or I don't have to go to that seminar, or I don't need to read that paper. You never know what you're going to wind up doing. That's more true today in the good old days. So don't limit yourself. So I'm training people that are multi-purpose, can do many different things, okay? That's what I like to do now. There are individuals, some can do that better than others, right? But so that's always been my philosophy, that don't limit yourself. It's great.
Thanks. Sure. Thank you so much. We're grateful that you took time to do this. I think I know you have to travel back with the